What a magical sound to be surrounded by. Welcome to Gardening Australia. A little later on, I'll be showing you what to plant and what to do to get lots of wonderful bird life into your garden. And that's just a part of the great gardening we've got in store for you this week.
Garden design, of course, it's about balance, elegance, proportion and all the rest, but it's also about fun. And here's a great place to look at that, the children's garden at Melbourne's Botanic Gardens.
Whether you've got a big garden or just a courtyard, you can grow tomatoes, provided you've got plenty of sun. And you can grow them in the ground or in pots. And today, I'm going to show you how to do both.
And we meet a floral artist who has a very personal connection to the flowers that she uses in her stunning work.
With the weather warming up, it's the perfect time to be planting summer fruit and veg. And to me, the standout has to be tomatoes. Whether you've got a big garden or just a courtyard, you can grow tomatoes, provided you've got plenty of sun. And you can grow them in the ground or in pots. And today, I'm going to show you how to do both. First step, soil prep. To begin with, I'm just forking open the soil and taking out any old roots from the last crop. I'm not so fussed about the fine ones, they'll soon break down. But any big chunks, they come out. Now I'm adding a combination of aged sheep and cow manure. It's not particularly strong, but it contains a broad range of nutrients and lots of organic matter, and tomatoes love them. Now, don't be tempted to overfeed your tomatoes. If you do, particularly with a high nitrogen fertiliser, like chook manure, you'll find they'll put on lots of leaf at the expense of flowers and fruit, which is why I use this stuff. And then some rock minerals for trace elements. I'm mixing all that in to the depth of my garden fork. Then smooth it down, drip line back in place, and then water it in to settle it all down. I'm planting climbing tomatoes in these beds, also known as indeterminate varieties, which simply means they're the type that keep growing throughout the season, setting flowers and fruit as they go. Now, they'll need a really sturdy trellis system, so stakes at least 2 metres tall, and they should be firm in the ground so they can hold kilos of fruit and not blow over in the wind. Right, the first variety I'm planting is called Mighty Red, which is a bit of an old favourite, and it produces beautiful, large, almost perfectly round fruit, great for salads and sandwiches, all right? So when you're planting these guys, don't be afraid to plant them a little bit deeper, even part way up the stem, because they produce aerial roots, and they'll soon develop into really strong plants. There we go. In the second bed, I'm planting a cherry tomato called Sweet Bite, and the method is exactly the same. Okay, the beds are done. Now for pots. Right. Next tomato I'm going to plant is this, called Patio Prize. Now, it's a shrub tomato or determinate type, which means that it grows, flowers and sets fruit, and that's it, okay? They tend to be shorter plants. This one will grow about 50 to 60 centimetres. Now, I'm planting it in this pot, and the mix is a combination of regular potting mix, compost, and then this stuff. It's coir, or cocoa peat. And I made up the mix using equal parts of these. And the last thing I'll do is give it a little bit of a feed with that same mix of manure. There we go. And I'm just sort of teasing this mix of manure into the top of the soil, and then a little dressing of the rock minerals. And then, of course, mulch. Even in pots, mulch is critical during the warm summer months to help retain moisture and keep the roots cool. Now, the most important thing, I reckon, when you're growing tomatoes in containers is that you should have at least 20 to 25 litres of volume. And this is so you can actually keep enough moisture and nutrients around the roots as this plant grows. And of course, you'll also need drainage holes. So last up, training. Now these shrub types don't really need much because of their compact nature. They're largely self-supporting, but I do find putting in a stake like that, and as it grows tied up, it helps keep it upright as the fruit comes on and it gets a bit heavy. Whereas the climbing types, they do need training. Ideally keep it to 2, maximum 3 leading branches. And as other shoots form between the leaf and the main stem, just pinch those out early on. And that stops the plant from getting all tangled up and congested and reduces the chance of disease. So there we are. Follow those tips and you will be laughing.
I love succulents because they're so hardy and versatile, but I'm often asked how often should you water them? Well, in a hot, dry climate like this, in summer, if they're in small pots, they actually need watering every day or 2. However, in winter, you certainly need to cut that back. The first thing is make sure that all your succulents are in really well-drained soil because they don't like wet feet. And one of the things I do is I move a lot of them under cover, under the eaves, to protect them from my frost. And the trap is I can forget to water them. So even in winter, check the soil, put your finger in and make sure it's moist. And give them a good water about once a month if they're under cover.
Can I plant potatoes from the greengrocers? Well, you can, but I wouldn't. You can introduce pathogens and diseases into your gardens. Always buy certified stock from your nursery.
Now here's a lovely question. A gardener from Brazil living in Brisbane wants to know if they can grow inhame. They love that vegetable. Now, inhame is just a common name, sometimes applied to taro, sometimes applied to cocoa yam. And the good news is both grow really well in the subtropics. In fact, you can grow them from Cairns right the way down to Sydney. I wouldn't be without them.
Birds are wonderful. Our gardens provide us with a great way to help them and to help ourselves. We can interact with them, we can see them, and we can be providing them with a great home as well.
Holly Parsons is an ornithologist. She studied one of Australia's favourite birds for her PhD, the superb fairy wren. And she's the program manager for the Birds in Backyards project. If anyone knows how to attract birds into a garden, Holly does. So, Holly, what's the secret?
Well, water is really important for birds. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But really what we want is to be providing a garden with food and shelter. We do that, of course, through putting plants in the ground.
So you're looking at things like ground covers, then shrubs, and then right up to the canopy.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look at those 3 levels, starting at the bottom, lawns and ground covers. Now, most people wouldn't think of grass of being much benefit to birds.
Well, a little bit of lawn can be a good thing for birds. We don't want a garden that's entirely lawn, but some birds will use it. So your magpies, your sulphur-crested cockatoos, they'll come down on the lawn to feed, and the things like your kookaburras and your butcher birds as well will be looking for any movement on the lawn to be able to snaffle for a feed. But it's not only the big birds, some little birds do like a bit of lawn space as well. So superb fairy wrens, my favourite bird, love coming out on the lawn to hunt for insects. That's where they do all their feeding. What's even better is if you can let a little bit of your lawn go to seed, and then you've got some little seed heads which are going to be great for the parrots and finches to feed on.
Now, where your lawn ends, it meets the garden, and there's always mulch there. How critical is mulch in all of this?
Well, mulch is essential for a bird-friendly garden, and it's going to provide lots of spaces for invertebrates, which means the birds are going to be the ones that are going to be scurrying through it looking for them to eat.
Now to the second layer in the garden, the middle layer, or understory.
We have open lawn space, we have tall trees, but we're forgetting all the stuff in the middle. And it's that middle layer that's really important for a lot of our birds. So things like your Banksias, your tea trees, hakeas are fantastic.
Yeah, the hakeas are great because they're spiky and it provides a lot of protection.
That's right, so lots of little birds love hiding in them. It gives them that sense of security. And things like your Ned Kelly grevillea here, great for a lot of the big birds, lots and lots of nectar. But those big birds can chase away a lot of our smaller birds. So you can think about adding some of the smaller flowering grevilleas to your garden as well, like the scarlet sprite over there. Nice little flower means a little beak is going to get into it, but one of the big buffy beaks isn't.
Now, let's go all the way to the top. The third layer, or canopy.
So trees complete our habitat puzzle. They're, I guess you would say, the crowning glory in the garden. You don't have to have a lot of space. There are some smaller options for you.
But what exactly are you trying to attract with trees?
Well, there are lots of birds that love being up in the tops of the trees. So things like your spotted pardalotes and your thornbills will be flitting around looking for insects. And then, of course, when you've got things in flower, it means it's going to bring all those beautiful parrots into your garden.
And old trees are the best trees?
Oh, definitely. But it takes trees 100 to 150 years to be forming hollows, and they're really vital to a lot of our native birds. They use them for raising their young. So we can use nest boxes as an alternative for a lot of those birds. Some birds that we don't want in our garden, like our introduced species, like starlings and miners, will go into a nest box. So you need to keep an eye on it and
Keep the squatters out.
Absolutely. Be prepared to evict them if necessary.
OK, that's the 3 layers in the garden for food and shelter. But what do we need to know about providing water?
Water's a really great way to attract birds to your garden, and there's some simple things to do. So you can use ponds with lovely moving water like this, or you can go for bird baths. So a saucer on the ground or a pedestal bath, they're going to attract different types of birds to them. But it's always important to make sure that the water's clean, because birds are drinking and bathing in it, of course. And also make sure that the birds feel safe. So we've got a branch over the top here, we've got some shrubs behind us. It means that the birds can come and see that there's no approaching danger. They can have a splash around and they've got an escape route that they can use. And as we continue to become more and more urbanised, creating that habitat is going to become more and more important for the birds. So when you're putting plants in the ground, just have a think about the birds and what you can do to help them.
This coming week, you can help Holly and other scientists with the conservation of our precious bird life by taking part in the Aussie Backyard Bird Count. It's something the whole family can do. Look for details on the Gardening Australia website and this month's Gardening Australia magazine.
My name's Lisa Cooper, and I'm a florist and an artist. I work from this beautiful studio space in the Carriage Works in Everleigh in Sydney. I think that people see me as an artist because I think that is probably what I am first and foremost. Flowers can be used in the same way as paint is used on a canvas. They have much of the same qualities there. They're textural, the palette is wide and varied. I think my interest in flowers began when my father passed away when I was 13. People expressed their emotion and symbolised the loss of my father through the gifting of flowers. It was a monumental moment in my life. I saw that this huge influx of flowers was, in a way, imaging that loss and making tangible his passing. People have all kinds of associations with flowers. People daily use flowers to send their emotion to other people, and I love that I'm at the intersection of that. When I see, you know, a bud emerging on a drive to the country or something on a magnolia tree, I think, oh my God, they're coming, they're coming, they're coming. It's intoxicating. Well, with this arrangement, I feel conflicted because all of the elements are so beautiful and unique, and I feel so lucky to have them, but I think possibly the black hellebore wins. So I'm trying to make the black hellebore really the hero, and I'll choose the other elements in order to highlight the hellebore's beauty, but they just keep reflecting off each other. And I'm also using these beautiful red cyclamen flowers. I love them as a cut flower. I just think they look like feathers. and they actually last incredibly well. They're just so beautiful. They're amazing. When I was very small, my grandmother hung this oval frame portrait above my bed. Later on, I found out that she was Saint Teresa of Lisieux. I also found out that she was the patron saint of florists and artists. And I believe the patron saint of gardeners as well. And the patron saint of lost parents, which has a very deep connection for me as well. I absolutely think that she looks over me. I think she always has, and I think that I work in the area that I do as a result of her guidance. The feeling of wholeness and the feeling that your soul is peaceful is the reason I make work and the reason I work with flowers. I can't see myself doing anything else. Yeah, I'm in this up to my eyeballs. I just love it. I love it. It's for life.
Stackies Byzantine, or lamb's ears as they are affectionately known, are one of the toughest, low-maintenance, small perennials for our gardens. Their silver foliage forms a tight matting ground cover. They are a great plant for a border edging. Now, low maintenance does not mean no maintenance. Every couple of years, you'll need to get in and just decongest them. They get all stuck together, and spring is an ideal time to get in and divide them up. Stackies will often develop daggy leaves when water collects in the foliage of the congested clumps. And by dividing them, that can help the problem. So here's what to do. No need to be delicate. Get your garden fork out and take a fair-sized clump out of the ground. That's what you're looking for, a nice new piece of stackies that can be replanted or given away to friends. And by doing that whole border, that beautiful plant will be much rejuvenated.
Garden design, of course, it's about balance, elegance, proportion and all the rest, but it's also about fun. And here's a great place to look at that, the children's garden at Melbourne's Botanic Gardens. Now, for those who like to be beside the seaside, here's a great idea. This planting comprises coastal tea tree, Leptospermum levigatum, with broadleaf paperbark, Melaleuca quinquenervia. The plants are planted really densely, and the effect is you get this wonderful cave-like idea, not least because the branches are all woven together to make it really, really dense and dark. It's a great place for children's play, and it only takes a small area to get this great effect. How's this? Foxtail fern, Asparagus densiflorus, looking for all the world like seaweed on the seabed, and through it a ground cover of lamandra that looks like seagrass. Now, if you don't get that aquatic illusion, look at these charming sea creatures. They're covered with Muhlenbeckia complexa maidenhair vine. How endearing. Well, just look at these marvellous Australian native palms. Now, these are known as bungalow palms, and mostly people plant them as single specimens. They look a bit naff then, you know, but like this, planted as a big group, they really do look wonderful. First of all, you've got the repetition of all these trunks. They're really quite beautiful, and they act as sort of obstacles, so you have to weave your way through them, and that in itself's quite fun. But the foliage, it gives you a great roof too. I love listening to the sound of rain falling on them. And that character continues here with this bamboo. It's called Phylostachys heterocycla. It's a marvellous bamboo with really quite robust stems. I love weaving through here. If anything, these are denser than the stems of the palm. The only thing you've got to remember to do to keep this character is to take out the old stems. They go a sort of fawny brown like this, and they rattle quite a lot too. And you just cut those out right down at ground level. If you do that, you'll maintain this fantastic sort of semi-open area and these beautiful tall stems. They really are quite gorgeous. Now, I just love this cypress. Its gaunt branches hang down over the top of you and create quite a magical shadow effect. But the children, they don't really care what the plants are. What interests them are often the spaces between them, the nooks and the crannies. And if they're connected by secret little passageways, so much the better. Once they're in their own world. And it's not so much a garden, it's whatever their imagination wants it to be. Sometimes fun things in your garden take a bit of planning. Now, these snow gums, Eucalyptus pauciflora, they were, when they were young, weighted down so that the branches took extraordinary forms and shapes and angles. Looking at them now as they've matured, I think they're quite wonderful, with the branches, the bark, the foliage, their shape, all contributing to this incredible effect. They're like a sort of giant bonsai. But there are some plants which are naturally eccentric. You don't have to do a thing to them to get a really good result, like this bottle tree. And boy, do kids love them. They've got these huge stomachs, as it were, but they've got so much appeal. Another thing that children enjoy in the garden is a maze. They don't have to be really complicated. They're really about the fun of chasing through and finding your way in and out. In this case, it's lavender. Over there, there's one of rosemary. It flowers beautifully and smells wonderful as one goes brushing past. You know, having something like a lavender maze need not be expensive if you propagate your own plants, and that's not really difficult. You need to take a cutting that's about 5 to 7 centimetres long. I like to angle the base of my cuttings, pull off the lower leaves like that. You've got a really nice little cutting there, and you simply pop that into a pot of reasonable quality potting mix like that. In this case, I've got, what, something like 20 or 25 cuttings in there. If I keep them in a warm place and I keep them nice and moist, then I should have rooted plants in around about 4 to 5 weeks. I can pot them on if I want and grow them a little bit more, or perhaps just plant them straight out into the garden in the form of a maze. So there you go. You can enjoy plants, but you can also have fun in your garden by propagating them.
Colour. We all just love it. And today we're lucky enough to be at the Australian Botanic Gardens Mount Annan in Sydney's west to see one of the most magnificent displays of our own colourful native wildflowers. Jen is a horticulturist working in the native wildflower display, and at this time of year, spring, it's her full-time gig. Jen, I reckon you would be one of the luckiest people in the world. I would kill to work in a garden like this.
I'm quite blessed to be able to have the opportunity to work here and to be able to produce these wonderful Western Australian wildflowers.
Yeah, essentially they are wild flowers that you would find in the bush. How do you go about growing them over here on the East Coast?
It can be challenging sometimes. They're raised garden beds, so there's good free drainage, and then I renovate the soil, bring in top mix, wash river sand and compost and soil, and they're all mixed together.
So basically after you've prepared the soil, you direct sow the seeds straight in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we mix that with the potty mix, and then we direct sow straight onto the garden bed, like feeding the chooks. That's how we throw it.
Would you say they're one of the best to grow at home?
Oh yeah, they're really reliable, tough, hardy. It's a really good cut flower, very easy to grow.
Now, stunning as they are, these annual wildflowers wouldn't be suited to all climate zones. So what happens if you're craving native colour, want something suited to your area, and something you could potentially grow in a pot? Well, meet some of my favourite, very versatile, perennial native wildflowers. In Western Australia, this blue leschnalia just grows wild on the side of the road. But unfortunately, in more humid climates, it can tend to struggle in the garden. But give it the sort of conditions it's got here, a really well-drained position, or grow it in a pot or hanging basket, and it'll give you the most magnificent displays of colour. This is commonly known as the golden everlasting, or Xerochrysum bracteatum. In the wild, this occurs in every state of Australia, so it's an incredibly adaptable plant, and it was actually one of the first Australian wildflowers specifically bred for horticulture back in the 19th century. So now we have a whole beautiful array of garden forms, from annuals to short-lived perennials. This is a really versatile group of native perennials, the Brachyscombe daisies. This is the most commonly grown form, multi-fider, great plant, flowers prolifically, but after a couple of years, because it grows from a single shoot, it starts to die out on the extremities. If you want a little bit more bang for your buck, this is a form of a species called Brachyscombe formosa. And the beauty of this one is that it suckers. So as it grows, you'll get little plants coming up a little way away from the mother plant. They can either be used to form new little colonies and a little drift, or you can dig them up and transplant them to other parts of your garden. A really great value wildflower. So whether you fancy having a go at growing some of the extraordinary Western Australian wildflowers, or perhaps some of the easier to grow native perennials, there's an Australian wildflower somewhere just waiting to paint splashes of colour across your garden.
Well, that's all we've got time for this week. Don't forget, if you want to get involved in the Aussie Backyard Bird Count, check out our website or this month's Gardening Australia magazine. Now, let's see what's coming up for you next time. Jerry's surrounded by an explosion of colour as he explores the stunning bedding displays in Roma Street Parklands. Jane is meeting with a young Melbourne garden designer whose love of the recycled makes his gardens both unique and playful. And I'll be visiting a fascinating garden in WA owned by an eminent plant biologist who brings his work home. I'll see you then.